And it's Wednesday night. It's showtime. It's the Panther-Lair Show here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We are started right at 8:30. Sometimes I get accused of not starting on time or being a few minutes late or running past the start time of 8:30 that we talk about it all day being an 8:30 live stream, and we end up waiting too long to start it. Well, here we are today. We are live at 8:30, so I don't want to hear about it anymore because we are on time for this one. You know, kill the first minute or two, let people start to filter in and tell you all the important things that you need to know about, like the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. The most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, video, whether it's football, it's basketball, it's recruiting. You can find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans all day, every day. You can find it going on at Panther-Lair.com. The Pitt fans have been busy on the boards this week. They have been, they've had lots to talk about. And we've got a lot to talk about. So the message boards have been real active, covering a lot of ground, certainly with training camp happening in the South Side, and then a whole bunch of things happening just in the last few days that kind of, I mean, they're connected to what's happening in the South Side, but it's funny. I was making a list of things I wanted to talk about tonight. We'll bring in Jim Hammett from Panther-Lair.com soon to join the conversation here in a few minutes. But I was making a list of things to talk about tonight, and I started jotting down, and I got through like 3 or 4 things, and I'm like, wait, none of these have to do with training camp. None of these have to do with the football season. None of these things have to do with the players working in the South Side and getting ready for the season that's coming up in just a few weeks. But such is the case right now. So we've got a lot to talk about on tonight's show. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content. You want to make sure that you stay up to date when we release a new morning Pitt video every day of the week, Monday through Friday, or we go live for these live shows on Wednesday nights, or we release video interviews or press conferences or practice highlights. We've had those from every practice so far. We've got, post-game live shows. We do all kinds of things here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you don't miss it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can turn on notifications also. This is an option. This is up to you. This is something that's available to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com subscribers. If you're so inclined, you can turn on notifications, and then you'll get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live or every time we post new content. But really what subscribing does is it just keeps you up to date on everything we do. And it makes me feel better because I like seeing those numbers. So like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got people jumping in on the comments already. We've got a variety of topics being thrown around out there. And there's a couple of things that we got to talk about. And I'll start off talking about a few of them, and then and I'm sure we'll come back to it with some questions and things like that throughout the course of the hour here on the live show. But I have to start with, ACC realignment, conference expansion is always a big topic. And I have some thoughts on that. There's some things I want to say about that as far as, talking about SMU, talking about Stanford, talking about Cal. I want to talk about that, but it sort of feels like there's almost something not necessarily more pressing, but more recent. And that's the news that Gene Smith is retiring as the Ohio State athletic director. This news came out today. Gene Smith announced that he's retiring in the next year as Ohio State's athletic director. And when he announced that, Pitt fans had a strong reaction to it. Ohio State fans had the strongest reaction. I think Pitt fans had the second strongest reaction. I'm not so sure about UCLA or Washington State fans because their AD gets talked about for this job as well. But Pitt fans certainly had a reaction. Why? Because Heather Lyke was at Ohio State for like 15 years. And despite the fact that she's a Michigan woman, that she went to Michigan before she went to Akron, I think for her, post-grad work or JD or whatever it was. Even though she went to Michigan, she worked at Ohio State for 15 years. And that made her, that makes her a prime candidate for that job when it comes open. Now, the job doesn't come open very often. Gene Smith is only the 8th athletic director in the history of Ohio State. He's only been there. He's been there for a little bit less than 20 years. And so it's not like that happens very often. But the thing that we always heard, and the thing that we were always told, and the thing we always believed, and the thing we always said when other jobs came open, it was that the one job to worry about for Heather Lyke, if you're Pitt, the one job that could draw her away from Pitt was Ohio State. That was the one to watch out for. She get linked to this job or that job. They talked about, remember USC got talked about. I feel like Northwestern might have been bandied about a little bit. I think even like UConn or something a couple of years ago. Every time I would ask about these things, I'd be told, we think we're good. We think she's happy here. We don't think she's leaving. But watch out for Ohio State. If Ohio State ever comes open, that's the one to watch out for. And now Ohio State is coming open. It's coming open in the next year. And like, I'm not going to sit here and say, no, that's nothing, Pitt shouldn't be concerned about that. There's nothing to worry about there. She's not going anywhere. I can't say that. My personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, it's not really based on anything more than my opinion. My personal opinion is if the Ohio State calls and says, hey, Heather, we want you to be our athletic director. My guess is she will say, well, if you change the name to director of athletics, I'm in. I don't think she turns that job down if it's offered to her. The question is whether or not it'll be offered to her. And there's some interesting timelines going on here. Ohio State still needs to name a president. Their university president resigned or retired or stepped down or whatever it is sometime in the last year or so. I think she announced last November she was resigning and then finally stepped out of the position in the spring. They still haven't hired a president. You would think that the president hire would be a more pressing matter and get done first and be a priority sooner than the athletic director hire. So maybe there's a little bit of a timeline where, nothing's going to happen soon, but it's going to be something to keep an eye on until Ohio State hires an athletic director. And it might be Heather Lyke, and it might not. I think there's a lot of ways that it could go. I think Heather Lyke makes a lot of sense as a candidate. She's obviously had a lot of success. She's, at Pitt. The athletic department is in a pretty good place right now, and she has a good deal to do with that. She's got a long history at Ohio State. She's been around, she's been there. She's been a part of it. But at the same time, there's going to be no shortage of good candidates for that job. I mean, there are two other people, Pat Chun and I keep forgetting his name, the UCLA athletic director. They both also spent like 15 years at Ohio State each. And so you've got 3 sitting Power 5 ADs with strong ties to Ohio State. They're all going to be attractive as Ohio State looks to hire a new athletic director. Heather Lyke is certainly going to be attractive as Ohio State looks to hire a new athletic director, but she's not going to be the only candidate they consider. I do think they'll vet her. They'll probably reach out. A search firm will probably reach out and at least to say, hey, are you interested enough that we should pursue this and really find out if it's a good fit for us? But the question will come down to whether or not Ohio State wants to say, will you take this job? If they do, I think the answer is probably yes. The question is, will they ever say that? Let's see what Jim thinks. Jim Hammett is here now. Let's bring him in. There you are, Jim. Let me turn the volume up so I can hear you. How are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Glad you could join us. I mean, if Ohio State says, Heather Lyke, we want you to be our athletic director, she says yes, right? I mean, it's no hesitation.
Yeah, I would say no hesitation. I mean, there's 4 or 5 just absolute powerhouse athletic programs in this country, and that's one of them. And if you have the chance to run it, you're going to say yes.
Yeah, especially if you have ties to it. It's not like I know USC was talking about, or Texas. Let's say Texas. It's not like Texas is saying, Heather Lyke, we want you to come be the AD. I mean, she's got strong ties, which kind of makes her even more of an attractive candidate, I would think. The fact that she's got those ties to Ohio State, but again, she needs to, they need to ask the question. You know what I mean? Like people were wondering, well, would she leave? Will she leave? Yeah, I think she would leave. They've got to ask the question. What'll be interesting to see is whether, I think Ohio State's got a lot of options here. First of all, there will be a lot of sitting ADs who are interested in that job. It'll be interesting to see if, given the way everything has moved and transformed over the past 10 years, 15 years, if Ohio State even looks outside of athletics. You know what I mean? Looks for even, someone with more of a business background to run the athletic department. I don't think that would be off the table as well. Ohio State should have their choice of candidates, including but not limited to Heather Lyke.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now what everyone's doing is what the natural thing happens for every coaching opening or athletic director opening. Like if Pat Narduzzi retired tomorrow, like the first 10 candidates would be like some guy with a tie to Pittsburgh. So I think that's what everyone at Ohio State is doing right now. It's like, all right, these are the natural candidates, but they can go out and get anyone. So yeah, she's going to be a strong candidate because of her connections, but also because she's a really good athletic director. But there's also a lot of really good athletic directors. So their pool is probably wider than any other school.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're going to have a lot of good options. Honestly, my biggest concern as it relates to Pitt in this situation is less about if it happened. If Ohio State said, Heather Lyke, we want you to be our new director of athletics, and she said, okay, I will do it. I have some faith that Pitt is attractive enough now that they could get another good athletic director. What concerns me more is having sort of transition leadership or a leadership transition at a point where things are really kind of up in the air, a tumultuous period right now for the ACC, for Pitt, for college football. That concerns me, and it ties into the fact that they have a new chancellor as well. And I'm not, I don't know that Joan Gable is incapable of representing Pitt's interests as the ACC moves forward and either tries to add schools or Pitt tries to find a new home. But she's new to the game. She's new to the table. She doesn't have the existing connections and relationships that Patrick Gallagher had. And that's a little concerning. And then to make even more transition with having to change athletic director, that's what concerns me the most. I think they could find another good athletic director, but I don't think you really want to have too much transition at this particular point in time.
No, I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen next with conference realignment. I mean, I think we've said a couple times. I mean, I think the ACC as it is probably going to be the same for the next few years, but that doesn't mean all these discussions aren't happening, and you want to have people there familiar with the discussion. So yeah, you're adding a new athletic director to the mix, which it could be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing.
A couple of people. I mean. Willat Harris says Louis Riddick would be the next AD. Ryan says Bostic is the next AD if Heather Lyke leaves. I think one of those is said seriously, one in jest. I'm not sure. But those, I mean, to your point of these automatic names will get it brought up. Yeah, Pat Bostic's name would get brought up. Yeah, Louis Riddick's name would get brought up. I don't know if Pitt at this particular point in time, and somewhat tied to the fact of what college sports are like right now, but also tied to the state of Pitt's athletic department, which I think is generally healthy and strong. I don't know. I guess the easiest way to ask this question, should Pitt be someone's first job as athletic director? Or I don't want to say, are they past that point because it sounds demeaning to Bostic and Riddick, but I mean, I kind of feel like if they need to hire a new athletic director, they should be able to go get a sitting athletic director. Maybe not a Power 5 person, but someone like, Heather Lyke at Eastern Michigan or something like that. Do you feel like they're past the point of, or maybe they should just be open to any candidate? You never know where you might find the best one, or are they past the point of being someone's first job?
Yeah, I mean, I get your point, and I get there are people with Pitt connections that have never been an athletic director, but I do think they're at that point where they can go grab a sitting athletic director from, I guess, one of the group of 5 schools. I mean, in the same sense as Heather Lyke. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to vet everyone. You're going to explore all avenues. If this ever comes up, if Pitt needs to hire a new athletic director in the next year, which we don't know yet. I mean, everything's so new, and I mean, obviously everyone's reactionary. It's like, oh, Ohio State's open, I guess Heather Lyke's leaving. I mean, that's everyone's first thought, but I think we're a little bit too far ahead of ourselves right now.
Yeah, especially, I mean, they don't even have a president. Ohio State doesn't. So that hire, I would think, has to be made before they move on an athletic director. So you're a little ways away from it. I do think that Heather Lyke, I almost said Heather Lyke likes. I think Heather Lyke appreciates this job enough, likes being here enough, that if she would not get the Ohio State job, I think she could be here for a long time. I don't think there are a lot of other places that are sort of automatic that she would leave for. Maybe Michigan, because of her ties there. But I don't think there are too many others. I think she's pretty happy where she is. I mean, obviously she's going to have a new working relationship with the new chancellor. But as long as there's no issues there, I could see her staying here for a while. I always felt like Ohio State was that one job, that everybody has that one job that no matter what you're doing, you would leave for it. Like, Pat Narduzzi, what would Pat Narduzzi's like one job be? What do he's already, as far as we're told, he turned down Michigan State, right? So it's not that. Do you think Pat Narduzzi has a one job that he would not say, he wouldn't be able to say no to?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's similar to Lyke. I guess like Ohio State, Michigan, maybe Notre Dame, like something like that. I mean, I don't. But I agree with you about Lyke. I mean, I think Ohio State and Michigan are probably the two jobs she would leave for, and if she's offered one, it's probably going to happen. So I don't know. I mean, everyone has a couple. I mean, I guess we all know like Jeff Capel, if Duke ever came open, he would leave in a heartbeat. I mean, everyone has that one job. So
yeah, I would think so. Even though Jeff claims, I was never trying to get back to Duke and all that stuff, but that's not the same thing as turning it down. I don't see you turning it down. Will says I don't think Deuce has that one job. I feel like yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe in Michigan or Ohio State. I feel like Notre Dame, and he's never said anything that leads me to believe this. I just feel like. I mean, I think he is a Catholic. I think he is Catholic. He's got the Italian upbringing. And it's not because of that, just because he's such an old school guy. I think Notre Dame still means a lot to him. And if he had the chance to go run a program to run Notre Dame, I feel like he would go for that. But the fact that he, again, as we're told, that he turned down Michigan State, which is a place where he had a lot of connections and had a lot of history, I feel like that list is probably pretty short. But Notre Dame might be one. As far as ACC goes, and we've had a few questions here. This question's a little bit silly. G Money says, if ACC gets Cal and Stanford, let's try to poach Vanderbilt and Northwestern and become the academic Atlantic Coast Conference. That you're not going to poach Vanderbilt and Northwestern. Nobody's going to say no to the money. Nobody's going to give the money back, right? So that's a little bit silly. Peninsula P says, I think the ACC should grab Washington State and Oregon State as well. All right, so that is a little more interesting. Let's say they get Stanford and Cal. Do you want Washington State and Oregon State to come with them?
No. Not really. I mean, I think like I understand the value of the whole Stanford Cal thing because ESPN has a lot of slots to fill, and ACC football at 10:30 at night on Friday and Saturdays that's their appeal. So if you want to add a couple more teams, you have a few more chances. But I mean, if Pitt's gonna, or if ACC is gonna, make some moves and be proactive, I would just try to like poach the Arizona schools. Be like, all right, well, we could probably offer you something better than the Big 12. So if you're gonna go to the West Coast, why not do something a little bit better than Oregon State and Washington State?
That's like, I think you kind of touched on something that I really, and it's been asked a lot on Twitter of just where were they for the past year, for the past 2 years? Why wasn't the ACC being proactive and trying to go get teams from the Big 12? I mean, honestly, that seems like the league that you could have really gone on. You know what I mean? You could have grabbed Cincinnati before they signed to go to the Big 12. You could have got West Virginia. Yeah, I mean, there's buyouts and all these things and exit fees and things like that. But if the Big 12 can go get Colorado and Arizona State and Utah, and again, they're in a bit of, they have their own media deal, contract timelines and whatnot. Like, why couldn't you go out and be proactive and try to poach from the Big 12? Give yourself some added stability. Get up to 16 teams or 18 teams. Get West Virginia. Try to get Kansas. Maybe bring Cincinnati in and get them before they get to the Big 12. The Pac-12 is dead. The SEC has made its moves. The Big 10 has made its moves. The Big 12 is making moves. And the ACC is just sitting there saying, well, we hope we stay good like this. Well, Ad Harris has a comment. He says, does the fact that the ACC kicked the tires on Stanford and Cal so late bother you with ACC leadership? At this point, you have to add as many Power 5 teams as possible. Do you have an issue with that? Do you feel like they should have been more proactive over the last 24 months?
I don't know if they needed to be proactive, but now that they're doing what they're doing now, it looks out of desperation. It's like, okay, the conference is entirely rated and you're going for the two best out of the four. that doesn't exactly come from a strong, leadership standpoint. I mean, I get why like none of it makes sense. There's no reason to like on a logistical scale to have Stanford and Cal in the ACC for every other sport other than football. It makes no sense at all, but nothing has made sense in the past week or so, or
Right.
past couple years. But yeah, I mean, I think people would have gotten on board with them doing something or trying something. I mean, there's just been silence. There's been nothing, and they're just watching it happen. And predictably, I mean, Clemson's not making noise about it, but Florida State is. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, like, what are we doing here? Like, let's figure it out. And I think, the more that this comes out about Cal and Stanford and even SMU, I don't think Clemson's all that happy about it. I mean, that doesn't really appeal to them. So I think if they want to make a power move, just go get some Big 12 teams before the Big 12 settles.
Yeah. Do you think it's more important to make a power move to make Florida State happy, or to make a power move so you add more numbers, so when Florida State eventually leaves, and presumably Clemson as well, you're not cut down to like 8 teams or something like that, or 12 teams? You're still a solid 14 or 16 strong if you add more now. Then when that attrition comes, you still have the numbers.
I think it could be both. I mean, I think you could see, maybe Florida State exists in that league for a while and the money's a little bit better and they kind of get on board with it. Or if they decide to leave, your conference is great. It really, to me, what I'm seeing big picture wise, it's ACC and Big 12 is fighting to be the third conference. And I don't know if the Big 12's better, but it looks like they're at least trying.
Right. Yeah. And that sort of has projected strength and stability. It's like, well, the Big 12 looks stronger than the ACC because they're doing something. Maybe the ACC's long play was, if you asked them a year ago, they'd say, well, look, we just hope the status quo holds. We just want to stand pat. We want everybody to just be how they are and settle down for a while. But then thinking in the back of their head, if, some of these moves end up happening, we'll, grab a few from the scrap heap of the Pac-12. So when Colorado and, when the four corner schools go to the Big 12 and Oregon and Washington go to the Big 10, we'll get out there and grab Stanford and Cal without having to be too predatory about it. We can just sort of let them fall to us. Now, I'm all in favor of being proactive and, not waiting them for fall to you, but maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe they were willing or hoping for the status quo to hold. And when it didn't, they figured they would, pick over the scraps like everybody else. And I mean, the scraps of Cal and Stanford aren't bad, other than the fact that they're on the other side of the country. They're not the worst scraps you could add. I mean, it's better than Washington State and Oregon State, I guess. But maybe that was the long play. Could that have been what they were counting on or sort of banking on?
I don't know. I don't know if I should be giving the ACC credit or be upset with what they're doing. I don't know at this point because they've done nothing. They've said nothing. And right now it looks like they're kind of just reaching.
Yeah. Let's see. Got a few super chatters here. Hog Muncher says Pitt's best move is to join the Big 12. Don't you think cementing the West Virginia rivalry and starting up a Cincinnati one would be great long term? Well, Pitt, like Florida State and Clemson, is in no position to leave the ACC right now, right? I mean, if the ACC somehow is disintegrated and Pitt ends up in the Big 12, I don't think that's the worst landing place. I doubt they're going to find themselves in the Big 10. I mean, at some point, that thing has to hit a ceiling of how big that conference can actually get. I don't think they're going to be an SEC option either. I mean, although the SEC doesn't really have any markets in this sort of region, so maybe they could, but I mean, it seems to me that the Big 12 is always going to be a fallback home that exists for Pitt, and one with some natural built-in rivalries like West Virginia and Cincinnati, some regional games that, particularly if you bring in like Louisville as well, you've got kind of a little area here. These four teams can play each other without traveling too far. So, I mean, I kind of feel like the Big 12 will always sort of be there. Or am I taking it for granted?
No, I think you're right on that. I mean, I think if the ACC split, they would invite Pitt mainly for, to give West Virginia and Cincinnati an extra partner in the North more than anything. But I still think Pitt's best home right now is the ACC as it is. And if, they lose Florida State and Clemson, I think the ACC with everyone else maybe picking off some Big 12 teams is still better than just flat out joining the Big 12.
Yeah. Eric Bruno's a super chatter as well. He says, I saw Larry Williams from the Rivals Clemson site tweet about Notre Dame strongly advocating for Stanford and Cal. Not sure I fully grasp the motivation since Notre Dame isn't a full-time member. No, but I mean, like, the ACC, the Big Ten, probably the SEC, certainly the Big 12, they will do whatever Notre Dame asks them to do. Any request Notre Dame would ever make will be granted, to the fullest extent of anyone's capabilities. Nobody's going to say no to Notre Dame. If Notre Dame is advocating for Stanford and Cal, then the ACC is going to take that under strong consideration, even if they're not a full member, because dangling that carrot of Notre Dame potentially becoming a full member, it's always going to be out there. So, you want to say, oh, they're just they're bowing to Notre Dame's whims. Well, yeah, that's what you do. You bow to Notre Dame's whims. Whims. That's just part of the deal in this whole thing. They're half members. They're not even half members. They're like, how many sports Notre Dame probably has? 19, 20 sports? They're like 1/20th members. It just happens to be the biggest 1/20th of their athletic department, the only one that anyone's actually interested in. And they refuse. But the ACC does it just like the Big East did it because, well, there's always a chance that eventually they might decide to join. So, yeah, if Notre Dame wants to advocate for Stanford and Cal, I take that under strong consideration. And I'm still only doing it if it makes sense for the ACC. But, Notre Dame's voice is just as loud as anyone else's and counts for just as much, if not more than anyone else's.
Yeah, I look at it like this. Like, Notre Dame's the real pretty girl in school, and the ACC is kind of the dorky guy. And whatever she says to do, that dorky guy will do. That's kind of what it is. That's the analogy.
Oh, man, you just described my marriage. I can't believe it. Yeah, so I don't know. Once you get into contracts and things like that, it's tough to say, like, oh, go poach the Big 12. I think it would be great. Like, the Stanford Cal thing just sits weird with me because, from your screen, I don't know which way is left and right, but you've got all of the conference here and you've got these two schools over here like that. And I don't know how you really bridge that gap. Like, you're going to get Midwest programs, you're going to get Rocky Mountain programs, mountain programs. Like, where are you going to poach the Mountain West just to give some kind of geographical connection or make them at least a little bit closer to the rest of the conference? I don't know how you really bridge that gap. I don't know what the solution is. Is it Stanford, Cal, and SMU so you get to 17 teams? I don't know if that moves the needle, other than, like we said earlier, it just gives you some insurance when the other teams leave that you still have a bunch of Power 5 programs. But I don't know. It's a new week with new scenarios being put out there. Jim, do you have any new solutions for the ACC?
No, but I kind of go back to last year thinking about all this, like when it first started breaking. Whenever it looked like the Big 12 was the conference that was going to blow up and somehow the Pac-12 would survive, there was a lot more options for the ACC, or at least reasonable, like, okay, you could at least get on board with Kansas State because they're good at basketball and do that whole thing. And Oklahoma State has, a ton of money, whatever. So I think they kind of sat on their hands a little bit too long. I think it made more sense to poach the Big 12 when it was at its weakest.
Yeah, they probably needed to be a little more predatory, and they weren't. Who is definitely not a predator, or I'm fairly convinced that he's not a predator?
This wasn't one of your better segues.
No, I struggled on that one, but I'll advocate for him. I believe that Chris Gates is not a predator, and as a matter of fact, he's a helper. I think he helps people rather than hurting him. Chris would like to help the Big 12. He would like to help the Pac-12. The Pac-12 fell short of its goals for this fall. Do you realize that, Jim? The Pac-12 is falling short of its goals. It's a tough time of year to maintain your goals. The Pac-12 fell short of its goals for this fall, but Chris Gates can help them out. Tonight's show, of course, sponsored by Chris Gates Fitness. And by now, you know who he is and what he does. So let's get straight to the point. Chris's online fitness training camp is open for signups right now. You can go to his website, chrisgatesfitness.com, click on the coaching application form, and submit yours today to be a part of training camp. All Panther-Lair listeners get 75% off their first month of training camp. And this is a 90-day challenge designed to help you make progress now and also develop habits that will lead to long-term success with your health and fitness. You can learn a ton more about training camp on Chris's website. If you click on the articles tab, the very first one on that page will tell you everything you need to know about training camp. And Chris also just published a podcast episode that dives deep into every single aspect of the program. So sign up today. After August 13th, the signups will be closed. So the next opportunity to sign up for training camp won't be until January 2024. So this is your last chance this year to get on a program that's personalized and customized to you and your goals. Again, go to chrisgatesfitness.com, submit your coaching application, and get 75% off your first month. I mean, do you want to write the segues for the Chris Gates ad read, Jim?
No, I'll leave that to you.
We do it like a half hour into the show every time. You notice it happens right around like 8:59, 9 o'clock. Like that's generally like a little break right in the middle of the show. If you want to take over on segueing into the read, like, you know, if you want to set me up, if you want to Stockton to Malone here, you know, so I can do that read with a better segue. If you really feel like you can, I'm coming up with this off the top, you know, just sort of live and in the moment. I mean, you don't hit every shot, Jim. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I whenever you started, when you went into it, if you noticed, I looked at my phone. I was like, oh, it's 9 o'clock already. So I am used to it by now.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you want to take a little leadership there, if you want to drive the conversation toward the Chris Gates ad read, I mean, it'll never be as good as the time when I said that Blake Hinson needed to get with Chris and segued into it with that. That was probably the best one, but. You know, well, Chris actually was one of the first commenters on the show tonight. I think he commented like an hour and a half before the show even started. Said he would like to thank Chris. I think Chris is thanking me for getting his hopes way too high for Bub Means. The hype train is rolling. Jim, on the morning pit the other day, maybe today, actually, I did a choo-choo sound, like a real train whistle sound. That was about Bengali Kamara. And it was actually funny. Today's morning pit was 4 players who've been standing out so far in training camp. And yeah, I talked about Bub Means. I talked about Ryan Baer. I talked about Bengali Kamara, and I talked about Jordan Bass. And I rang the train whistle on Bengali Kamara for the hype train leaving the station. And later today, Pitt posted a video of Kamara returning interception. They're driving the hype train as much as I am. That train is leaving the station. Who are the most hyped guys right now from what you're seeing, what you're watching, what you're hearing fans talk about? Who are some of the, I just told you my 4 so far in camp. Who do you think through the first week of camp is getting the most hype?
Well, I noticed today Marquez Williams kind of quote tweeted Javon McIntyre and said all ACC on the way. So, I mean, I think Javon McIntyre has been getting some buzz. I think even Narduzzi said like he's clear now, which is high praise. So I would say him. I mean, to the hype train of Bub Means, I think Pitt football just posted one of his cool catches. So yeah,
that's right. So 2 out of my 4 guys, they posted videos. I should go check their account and see if they put up anything of Jordan Bass or Ryan Baer, because I mean, they should at least give me credit on the content if they're just going to follow my lead on everything. Let's see what they. Nope, they got the Bub Means catch. They got Jim Tressel. I didn't talk about Jim Tressel. Bengali Kamara. All right, they only got those 2. We'll see if by the end of the day tomorrow they put up something with Ryan Baer and something with Jordan Bass. If they do, then they're totally copying it. But anyway, so who else are you hearing some hype for?
I think we're hearing a little bit of hype, or maybe moderate amount of hype about the freshman receivers. I mean, every other day you're hearing about they make a great catch. So, I mean, I think one of them or 2 of them are going to play a lot. And they showed a couple of their catches. I think Lamar Seymour had a pretty sweet diving catch, and Kenny Johnson did a toe tap in the end zone for a touchdown. So they're getting a lot of love right now from the quarterbacks and the coaches. So I think we hit on the major ones, and then there's so many guys you just expect that are just you don't hear about them. It's like you're not going to hear about Jake Cradle or Matt Gonsalves because they're solid. They're good. You know what they're going to do. So I mean, I think as far as some new names, I think we hit on the main ones.
Well, Narduzzi did a good job with that on Tuesday when he talked about the freshman receivers. Lamar and what did he say? Lamar and Zion and the other 2 guys. So. Clearly, Kenny Johnson and Izzy Polk are making such a strong impression on Pat Narduzzi that he can't even remember their names during the press conference. I was like, wait, you're ignoring the 2 who seem to be getting the most hype. Although Zion Fowler-El has been getting a lot of positive praise too. Seymour and Polk being here in the spring, they talked about them a lot at the time. But I think Kenny Johnson had a lot of hype coming in, and Zion Fowler-El, who I kind of discounted a little bit. I think when you and I would talk about, and we talk on here, we'd say, well, at least 1 freshman receiver is going to burn his red shirt, probably 2, and possibly even 3. I think usually whenever we talked about it, Fowler-El was like the 4th guy, right? I mean, I think he was the one we sort of assumed isn't going to burn his red shirt. And I still sort of assume that, but I mean, he must have, what he did? He made a big play last Wednesday. And so on media day, everybody was talking about it. Pat Narduzzi was talking about it. The coaches, the players were like, "Oh, you got to watch out for this Zion Fowler. He made a big play on Wednesday." So it was all fresh in their mind. Have you revised your ranking 1 to 4 in terms of likelihood of redshirt burning among those receivers? 1 being the most likely, 4 being the least likely.
No, I mean, I would still probably put Zion Feller L4 and shake the other 3 up in a hat and pick one out. And I don't know. I mean, because like you said, he forgot Kenny Johnson's name on Tuesday, but he shouted him out on Monday. But he also shouted out one we haven't heard, probably Cha Nabuko. That was the first time we've heard anything about him, the fastest guy on the team. And, I think you guys interviewed him yesterday.
Oh, Che. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Your internet cut out just as you were saying the name. I'm like, that's the worst possible time for it to blip there. But Che, it's funny. So apparently Pitt's sports information department was telling us that he pronounces it Che or Cha.
I thought it was Cha.
Cha?
That's what I was saying. So I don't think you heard me. It's Cha.
Cha. Okay. Cha. But he's got a tattoo of Che, like the revolutionary, Argentinian or Colombian. I forget where. Yeah. And don't we all call him Che? Or was he Cha as well? Have I been calling him Cha for like all 40 some years of my life? Have I been calling the South American revolutionary by the wrong name?
See, I'm confused now because I think his dad runs like a football training thing and it's Chuck Speed. So I thought maybe it's Cha. We're going to have to talk to him and ask. Like,
maybe his dad is Chuck.
I don't know. These are all good things we should know about the players.
Hold on. I'm going on Che Guevara's Wikipedia page to find out how he pronounces it. This is terrible. It doesn't give me a pronunciation because everybody just calls him Che. Anyway, so all right, we're way off track here on this pronunciation thing. But if we're going to talk about it, we should be able to get it. I know the N is silent. I've got that. Wabuko. All right. So I'm just going to refer to him by his last name. I don't know what to make of him. He told us he ran a 4.340. I actually just got a text message from someone who would know, who says it's Che. It's like check without the CK at the end. So Che. Wabuko is a 4.340 guy. And he's got that speed, and he did come out and talk to us yesterday. And I was actually talking about this on the Morning Pit today. It's not an exact science, but since Pat Narduzzi started hand selecting all of our post-practice interview subjects, which I think kind of started around COVID, that they would pick interview subjects for us. We didn't really request them as much when we used to always make requests. He has been choosing them over the past few years. He's not going to send somebody who pissed him off in practice that day. You know what I mean? He's not going to send somebody who had a bad practice. He's not going to send somebody who's like messing around or loafing or blowing assignments. He's going to send somebody who had a good practice. We can at least assume that Wabuko had a good practice yesterday. So the fact that he sent him out, I think, is somewhat positive. I definitely have been discounting him. Like, I've definitely been discounting his potential contributions. Like, when I talk about the receivers and we talk about guys who are going to play, I kind of skip over him and Addison Copeland because and Javonte Royal. You know, it's Mumfield, Means, Reynolds, and then it's the freshman. And if those other 3 in between get any playing time, I mean, vaya con Dios, vaya con Dios, Che. Maybe we should be giving those guys more consideration. I mean, should we giving those guys more of a chance here, or not discounting them as much as we have been, or as much as I have been?
Well, I mean, if we go by the logic that he probably had a decent practice on Tuesday, well, he got a shout out on Monday for making a great catch on Sunday. So he's at least stacking good practices one on top of each other. So he's doing something right. Yeah. I actually want to ask you, since we're kind of on this topic, like, who is someone that would be sent out for an interview that you would just be totally blown away by? Like, wow, like, I can't believe Pat Narduzzi would even give him this good.
Oh, geez. I'd have to think about that because I can't imagine him having a good practice.
Yeah, or just like it's someone that you would just think is just like so buried on the depth chart that it's like, wow, like, I can't believe we're even talking to you.
I mean, like, I mean, Wabuko and Copeland, like, I really thought they were pretty far. Like, Aiden Henningham, where's Aiden Henningham on the depth chart? He hasn't played in a game since his freshman year. I was just looking at this. He played 6 games, and I don't mean to make fun of the young man. I mean, he came during a very difficult season in 2020. He played 6 games that year on special teams. He hasn't played at all in the last 2 seasons. I mean, not set foot on the field, not even on special teams. I think he's been hurt at times, but I mean, we hear about Braylon Lovelace, we hear about Jordan Bass and Rasheem Biles, we hear about Kyle Lewis, and obviously the other guy. And sort of in the middle there is Aiden Henningham that nobody, like, he would probably surprise me. There's like this one sort of giant mass of cornerbacks that are not AJ Woods, Marquez Williams, and MJ Devonshire, and kind of Rashad Battle, like Rylan Gandy, Noah Bigelow, Tamarian Crumpley.
Yeah.
Maybe we talked to Gandy when he was a freshman and he was getting a lot of hype.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't think we've ever talked to Crumpley. I don't think we've ever talked to Bigelow either. Even though Gandy already has at least 1 turnover so far in training camp. I think you noticed that, right? He had that on his helmet the other day. So that would probably be a guy who would surprise me if they sent him out. I'd be like, oh, really? Or not. Actually, Gandy wouldn't surprise me as much as like a Bigelow or a Crumpley, because they've talked up Gandy as being a guy who can contribute. There's just such a logjam at corner. I don't know, like those 3 guys, Devonshire, Williams, and Woods, are going to take like 90% of the snaps, and so there'll be next year at corner is going to be what this year is at safety, where it's going to be a major changeover, and you're going to have a bunch of guys who maybe they got some playing time, but they're going to be relatively inexperienced. Are you more bullish on this year's safeties or next year's corners? Probably this year's safeties, right? Because they've all played. We've seen them.
Yeah, I mean, Javon McIntyre had 2 interceptions last year. PJ O'Brien's made plays. Donovan McMillan's played a lot at Florida, even if it's special team. Like, those guys have all played. Like, these cornerbacks have never played, and they're probably not going to play this year.
Yeah. Yeah, unless somebody gets hurt. You know what I mean? Like, injury will be the one where a guy opts out or something like that. Ryan has the biggest question, as always. How has Phil Dracovic looked this camp, him compared to Christian Veer? Seen lots of complaints. He's throwing lots of ducks of passes. I haven't seen those complaints. I know there was one video Pitt tweeted out, and it was kind of a duck of a pass. But I look, Dracovic, Veer, they have the arm talent. I mean, we saw it in the spring. We're seeing it now. They have big arms. How's Veer in the pocket? How is his composure? Can he, how's his moxie and all that? And Dracovic, can he be accurate? You know what I mean? Can he, not try to do too much? Can he take what the defense gives him? And can he place the ball when he's not just in a scramble drill, heaving it down the field to Zay Flowers? I don't think he has Zay Flowers on this team. So can he do that? And no matter how many drills and practices you and I watch, we're not going to know until they play. I mean, I hope we don't know from the Wofford game, because anything we would learn from the Wofford game is probably going to be bad. We won't find out until they play Cincinnati, and play West Virginia and so on and so forth. So I don't know. You've gone to a couple practices just like I have. Anything? Have you seen anything from Dracovic or Veer that you didn't see in the spring?
Not really. I mean, if you guys follow along, we don't see a lot of practice. We see 35 minutes, and there's not a whole lot going on. I think there's only been 2 11 segments, and we've split the 4 practices, and both of them were the days you were there. So I haven't even seen anything. I haven't even seen anything cool yet.
It was cool, and that was part of the reason the Bub Means hype train was leaving the station, because he made an incredible catch against MJ Devonshire. I mean, and on that play, Dracovic put the ball gave Bub Means a chance to make a play, which, he did that on 1 or 2 snaps in the spring game too. And those were very encouraging as well. Pitt puts out videos of Bub Means, and Bub Means makes a catch in front of us, and he had a decent spring game. I think Bub Means being good can help Dracovic a lot. Obviously, if you have good receivers, that can go a long way. Dracovic's got to put the ball there, but I don't want to get too far down the road with the Bub Means hype, but I mean, you've seen him like I have. I mean, the guy looks like he was built in the lab. I mean, he's a physical specimen. He's got great size. He's fast. He's got, he's long. He can jump, all that stuff. I mean, he's just got to be a consistent receiver, and we're seeing him make some plays. That's why I wish we could watch all of practice, because then did I just see the one good catch he's made all of camp? You know, that one and the one that they tweeted out a video of. Are those the only two catches? Everything else is bouncing off his hands and hitting his helmet. And, you know, he's, you know, when they're doing reps on air, he's dropping the ball all over the place. Like, I don't know. But if they let us watch practice, we would maybe slow down on the bub me type train, or maybe that thing will pull out of the station to woo, woo, and here it comes, you know, but we don't get to see it all. It kills me. It kills me when I listen to Steelers reporters on the radio and they're just talking and talking and talking and talking. And I'm like,
be nice.
This is like all this stuff is Kendrick Green playing fullback. Like, no, like that's not going to be a story that matters at all, but damn, is it stirring up a lot of interest right now? You know, like that's something that everybody's interested in and everybody's talking about. And these guys just keep talking about how many snaps he's taking at fullback. And I mean, that could be happening at Pitt. David Green could be taking snaps all over the place at fullback, or maybe not David Green. Matt Altzman could be taking snaps at fullback, you know? We have no idea.
Well, it's interesting. Like, we were kind of like making fun of like the Steelers reporters the other day, because if like one thing happens and if you follow all of them, they all tweet the same thing. So it's like you got Allen, Backo, Kabali. It's like, it's like, all right, David Green's at fullback 10 times in a row.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it would be a story. Well, actually, in 2019, they had Rashad Wheeler taking snaps at fullback. And I think he did it like for 2 plays all season. But, oh, man, we got pulled over to a huddle. Okay, we got to keep this quiet. We can't really talk about this. This has to be, you know, this has got to stay here. Come on, get people interested and do it more than just your 13-second clip on Twitter. Like, is it going to sell any more season tickets? No, probably not. But at least it's something to get your people interested, something to get your people talking during the month of August, and have some interest in coming to watch you play Wofford. Maybe it's not going to hurt. Us reporting what's happening in training camp, actually watching practices, is not going to get anyone to not go to the games. You know what I mean? Like, we may or may not convince anyone to go to games when I talk about the Bub Means hype train or how good Bengali Kamara is going to be and all this stuff, and he's going to score 2 defensive touchdowns and everything. That may or may not convince someone to go to a game, but it's not going to convince anybody not to go to a game. I mean, we're off on a sidetrack, a tangent that we go off on many times, so I don't want to go down that road too far. But I mean, like, come on, what do we do? Like, me reporting on how the field goal kickers did, and I tracked every kick they took on Tuesday. Nobody cares. Nobody's gonna go to the games because of that. There.
Right.
CD asks, hey Chris, will Pitt be a running team again this year, or will they be lean heavy on the pass? They might. I think we talked about this last week or the week before. Looked at percentages. They might throw more, but they're not going to be a pass heavy team. I don't think there'll be any definition of pass heavy that will apply to this team this year. Do you?
No, I think I think most Pat Narduzzi football teams are trying to be balanced, and I think that's kind of the goal this year.
Yeah. TRR asks, what's the new Pitt Chancellor's view on athletics? Have there been past rumblings from Minnesota people? You know, when she got hired, there was just stuff about like some weird controversy about her taking a board position or something with some company. I didn't see as much on the athletic side as far as her time at Minnesota. I have heard from people that she seems to be, strongly in support of athletics, and that she's sees the value in it, and the university's front porch and all that stuff. To me, it's a let's see it. Let's see the money keep flowing, this ACC money that's coming in, and the various other dollars that athletics generates. Let's see it being used to support athletics. There's talk and there's action. She's seemingly talked well. Now the action has to follow. Have you picked up on anything?
Nothing specific. I mean, I'm with you. I'm kind of in wait and see mode.
I don't really. We'll take this question from TRR. If the ACC adds Stanford and Cal, can it negotiate with Apple TV to show games and net each team $15 million each? He means like Stanford and Cal getting $15 million each?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that was like with the Pac-12. They thought that was going to be their solution on their TV deal was Apple TV, and obviously everyone did not get on board with it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that would all work. I don't even see any there's partial payments, and some schools will get more than others, and kind of what Oregon and Washington are doing, and I don't know. I don't know how it would all work out, but there is an opportunity there to add teams. I just hate the idea of them being on the other side of the country. Josh Newark is checking in from DC with Queens of the Stone Age. What's your favorite Queens of the Stone Age song? Do you listen to Queens of the Stone Age, Jim? not really up my alley.
No, I went to see them last Saturday. They're awesome. They were at Stage AE. I don't know if I have a favorite song. There's a lot of great songs. Sky is Falling is a great song. Songs for the Deaf is a great song. The whole Songs for the Deaf album is a great song, or is a great album. I like a lot of their stuff. They're really good. But they are they're heavier than that hippy dippy crap you listen to, Jim. Let's see who else here has a comment. Hog Muncher's got a few more things about the conference. We took most of those. G Money says force Notre Dame to join with Cal, Stanford, SMU, West Virginia, and Cincinnati. I don't think you're ever going to force Notre Dame to join, right?
There's no. I mean, the offer is 100% open, and it's probably open from the SEC and Big Ten as well. If they want to join a conference at any time, they can just call a conference.
Yep, I think so. Let's see. Hogmuncher says you deserve a pat raise for that analogy, but I don't remember what analogy. That was a while ago. That was before 9 o'clock. So do you remember what analogy you made that you deserve a raise for?
Was it the Notre Dame and the
pretty girl. Yeah, that's right. You described my merits. That's right. Bryant Wagner said, is it just me or does anyone else think Sam Hartman might struggle at Notre Dame? How much of his success was related to their scheme? I think a huge amount. And I think there are big questions about what he's going to be at Notre Dame. I don't think there's any, I don't think it's a given at all that he's going to succeed. I think he's shown, I think he was not totally a product of the scheme. I think he's a talented player. I'm not at all convinced he's going to succeed in anything, approaching a more normal, non-slow mesh offense. Do you? I mean, what's your take on Sam Hartman? Jim, did you freeze?
Somehow I got kicked off my internet, but
but you're back now. Well, that's good. I thought you tried to sit in a certain spot where you were close to your router.
Well, the thing is, I was paying too much for internet, so I went and did the whole complaint thing, and they're like, "We'll upgrade. We'll make your price lower and give you a higher speed." So I thought I was good.
Yeah, it's worse, actually. I mean, you might just need to clean your camera or something because it's even a little bit foggy. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you had some condensation on there. Man, I should have told you that an hour ago because now it's much clearer picture. But also your internet is a little bit jumbled. What were you answering about Sam Hartman? What do you think about Sam Hartman?
I do kind of wonder about that whole premise, because Wake Forest is such a unique offense, and it lends itself to putting up big stats. But he's also going to a team that's much more talented, that probably has a better offensive line, that has great tight ends, good running backs. So it's going to be different. But I could see where someone would say about Sam Hartman, he was part of the system.
Yeah. All right. Actually, this is a good question I wanted to get into here. Peninsula P says, any insight into today's basketball game in Spain? Do you know who started? We actually do know who started. And actually, I wanted to talk about this. I wish we had gotten to it sooner because I think this is really interesting. Starting lineup for Pitt's game against Tenerife All-Stars in Spain. Starting lineup for Pitt: Carlton Carrington, Ishmael Leggett, Zach Austin, Blake Hinson, Guillermo Diaz-Graham. Federico playing with his national team. So you take him out of the mix, but 4 out of the 5, I think, are not a surprise. But I'm a little surprised about Carlton Carrington, though. I assumed Dior Johnson would be the starter, didn't you?
Yeah, and I guess in that lineup, I didn't really think of Leggett as a true point. So I thought, Dior maybe even low. I wasn't expecting Carrington, but from the few clips they've shown over the summer, I mean, he looks college ready. He has that bigger body, looks really athletic. And I have no idea if they were playing someone that's basically a high school varsity team or a semi-pro team or a rec league team. I have no idea what kind of team they played today, but he put up good numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they were a semi-pro team. They only won by 6. I mean, it wasn't, if it was a high school team in Spain, they probably should have killed them by more than 86-80 and being a close game going down the stretch. Blake Hinson scored 24, Austin had 18, Leggett and Guillermo Diaz-Graham scored 13 each. Papa Conte had 8 rebounds. Bub Carrington had 7, which is interesting. He also had 9 assists. I don't know what his point total came out to. Pitt didn't released that I've seen. Apparently, they didn't have like an official scorekeeper for this game, so our friend Matt Plizga at Pitt was just doing it on paper himself. So that's sort of where the stats come from. But what else? Carrington had 3 steals, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds. Not sure about points. Guillermo and Zach Austin blocked 2 shots each. Zach Austin is one of the real standouts here. 18 points, 2 blocks. He made 4 threes. He had 2 steals. We've talked about him being potentially the most interesting man on this team because he can do a little bit of everything. It seems like he did just about everything here. I didn't see much on the way of rebound numbers, but so he was he would have had less than 4 because Dior Johnson had 4, and that was the fewest amount that they released. So maybe he didn't have much on the boards, but seems like a good game from him. Obviously, we didn't see much of it, but what any other observations other than the interesting guard alignment?
That dunks from Zach Austin. Those were something.
Well, that's what they said, is that he was he's able to jump out of the gym. He's a really explosive athlete, and that's what he was going to bring, is that really explosive athleticism from the wing, that he could defend well, but he could also block shots and he could explode and dunk. So I mean, they definitely put a few of those highlights out there. It's a different team this year. I mean, we've talked about this a million times, and we'll continue talking about it. It's a different team because of guys like him. They didn't have a guy like him last year. The closest comparison we've all been able to come up with is that he might be like a taller Nike Savandi, which, sign me up for that. I mean, I'll take a taller Nike Savandi. That's a pretty good combination, I think.
Yeah, and I always thought whenever he signed, I mean, he's roughly the same size as Blake Hinson, but they have different games, but they can coexist because they have different games, and they can both do things. They can both rebound, and he can probably defend a little bit better. So, I mean, I think that really gives them a lot of options on the wing. If you're starting a guy like Blake Hinson, that's one of the leading scorers in the ACC, and a guy like Austin with that kind of athleticism, and you pair that with the tallest team Pitt's ever had, I mean, there's a lot of intrigue with this team.
I mean, is it just point guard? Is that the biggest question mark we have at this point with this group?
I would say yes, because I mean, I don't know if today's starting lineup is reflective of where things are, but it kind of seems like it with whoever else started. And yeah, I just didn't see Carrington coming. So I guess, yeah, that's a little bit of a question mark.
Yeah. With him, Dior Johnson, the only thing that the stats they released as far as Dior was 4 rebounds, 2 steals. That's it. Jalen Lowe had 5 assists, and I think that's the only thing they really said about him. He hit a 3, sort of all over the place because they don't have a full. Yeah, he was 1 of 2 from 3-point range and had 5 assists. I mean, I think all these young guards are going to be good. I think Dior, Carrington, and Lowe are going to be good. It's just a question of how good, how quickly, and how they work together. I just sort of assumed Dior was going to be the guy who was the starting point. To mix it up, though, is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Do you know, I forget how many games they're playing on this Spanish trip. Do you remember?
I think it's 3.
3? Okay. So we'll see. Oh, yeah, they play another game in Barcelona. They don't have the schedule on there. It's hard to keep track of. I mean, obviously these things are not televised, and there's only so much Pitt is able to do. They don't even know if they were going to have good enough Wi-Fi. It's a shame that they couldn't find a way to stream these games. I mean, if there's not even an official score, they probably could just set their phone up and like stream the game on YouTube. I don't think I don't think the rights holders are going to give them a hard time about that. You know what I mean? Like, that would be, I mean, Pitt fans would watch, right?
Yeah,
You'd get a few hundred viewers on a live stream of the Pitt team playing a game in Spain, wouldn't you?
I mean, on a Wednesday afternoon, I mean, there was enough people. There was a thread going on our site. I mean, that's we're plugging the site here, but I mean, people were talking Pitt hoops in the middle of August about a game against a bunch of Spanish semi-pro guys.
We hope. We think they're semi-pro. We're not really sure. Nobody's really chimed in to correct us yet on what the affiliation is. Yeah. All right. Last. I mean, I would have been watching, but all right. Last question, and this is for you, JR MVP. Since you were there, he's asking, or they are asking, will Oakland Originals be a game changer? You could probably spend a lot of time on this, but I'll leave this one for you.
Game changer, no, but I think it can be a great asset and resource for Pitt athletes. And I think anytime you can come up with something different, something innovative on this NIL front, you're going to tout yourself and really make it seem like this is the greatest thing in the world. But other schools have stuff like that. I mean, there's Alliance 412 and Oakland Originals is kind of the advertising or whatever promotional underneath it. So not much has changed yet. I mean, they have teased there's going to be a few more announcements, and I think there is a few more things coming, but we'll see. But I mean, I think Oakland Original, it's a cool concept. I don't know if the hype on Monday and what was delivered on Tuesday really matched, but I think it's a cool thing.
Yeah. They're trying, right? I mean, whatever they can do to find a way to make it productive for Pitt and successful for Pitt, they're trying. And I guess this is one of the things. But like you said, I think there's some other things coming that people will be a little more interested in, a little more excited about. But that one maybe left people a little bit, I don't want to say disappointed, but maybe it didn't live up to the hype that they were expecting. But I think ultimately it'll be a good thing for Pitt and the collective and the NIL efforts going forward. But all right, I think that's about it. It's 9:30, so we've gone on long enough with this. We'll be back, of course, next Wednesday night, Jim, to talk more. I think we'll be back next Wednesday night. Sometimes I have things going on Wednesdays, but I don't think I have anything next Wednesday. Are you free next Wednesday, Jim?
As far as I know right now.
Yeah, the only thing on my schedule is Pitt football camp. So that happens in the morning. So should be free and clear for Wednesday night. So thanks everybody who chimed in on the chat screen, and thanks everybody who had something to say tonight. Make sure you stay tuned to the website, Panther-Lair.com. And of course, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Jim, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll be back next Wednesday night for another live show. And of course, tomorrow morning for the morning pit. So keep it right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And we will talk to you again soon.